Hey everyone, and welcome to Aethercast, the Kharadron Overlords podcast, where you trust informatics, not superstition, and I talk softly and carry a big hammer. I'm Lee, the Arcanaut Admiral, and today I'm going to be speculating on the new Kharadron Overlords Warband. I'm just going to quickly bring the Warband up on my screen. So anyone watching can have a look. Okay, so first of all, before I actually start talking about the Warband, I just want to apologise to anyone for being late. Because I know there was a couple of people in the chat waiting. Unfortunately, turns out that time zones are quite difficult. That's also the reason why we haven't actually had many episodes of Aethercast, because getting several people together from 4 different continents at the same time and awake isn't actually that easy. And then to top that off, I had to travel abroad a couple of weeks ago, and then the clocks went forward in the UK an hour, and then they went back in Australia and New Zealand by an hour, which, when we were just getting used to the time zones, made it a bit more awkward for us. But we're getting there, and we're new to this, but hopefully we'll improve in the future. Okay, so quick recap on some of the stuff we talked about recently. The Justice League tournament, Gary Percival there, we were talking about him. He lost his game, the first game in day 2 against the Kharadron, but then won his next game after that. Can't remember who was playing in the last game, but essentially he ended up going 4-1. So well done to him. Adepticon, obviously that was happening. Nicholas Fence, who's in the Kharadron Overlords group on Facebook, he went 4-1 as well. So big well done to him as well. I think both his result and Gary's both show that KO can still be a competitive army if you play them well. So well done to them. And also, good thing to note was they were both playing quite different lists. So we're not really a mono build army. Okay, so let's look at this warband. Really only going to talk about this from a perspective of playing in AOS, because I don't really play Underworlds. Yeah, I can't really offer much opinion on that, really. But okay, so first thing I want to bring up here is the fact that the Sky Warden is missing his Sky Mines, which is quite important, because that means that the likelihood is the unit is not going to have the Sky Mines rule. Another interesting thing about the Sky Warden is, from the angle we can see here, he doesn't have a pistol. To be honest, it's probably not going to make much difference in terms of damage output. Potentially he's got it holstered on his back or something. Not sure there, but until tomorrow, when we actually when it goes on pre-release and we get multiple shots, the little 3D shots, and that we won't really know. But of course, then we'll have the warscroll as well. But I don't think he's going to have the pistol, to be honest. Also, Dan pointed out when I was chatting to him yesterday, it doesn't seem to have a rudder on. I mean, again, from the camera angle, he could still have it, but we don't know. That he might not. And that's quite interesting, because from a unit point of view, well, first of all, I think this unit is going to be like the Sky Warden, the 2 Arcanauts, and the Thunderer as a unit, and then the Thundrik, who is the chemist, will be a separate unit as a hero. So what's I'm just reading the chat, and apparently I need to discuss more the long moustache. I don't even know which moustache that. What, the Thunderer's moustache? I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, the issue is going to be that there's not any point having a unit, a model that can move 12 inches and fly in a unit where all the other 3 models in the unit move 4 inches and don't fly, and he has to keep in unit consistency within 1 inch. It's not going to be that much help. So I'm going to make a call here, and I think the law for this warband is going to be that they travelled to Shadespire to mine the Shadow Glass and stuff and whatever, made lots of profits, and at some point the ship they're in, frigate, ironclad, whatever, was destroyed, and they engaged in some sort of battle and stuff, and these guys are the only Kharadron Overlords left from the original expedition. And I think there's probably going to be some lore around that, and that's going to explain some of the differences between these models and the normal models. So they've had damages to equipment and stuff, and they've had to repair things out in the field. And I think what will happen is we'll see the Sky Warden will have reduced movement. Maybe not all the way down to 4 inches, but potentially down to 6 or 8 inches, I reckon, which would still be quite useful in game, because if he's over on the right hand side of a unit and then you move that unit over to the left, he could still potentially, go to the other end of the unit, and if he's an inch away from the other models, you gain his base plus an inch of distance that whole unit moves as well, and it helps you sort of reposition the unit a bit. And with his 2-inch range and that Sky Pike as well, that could be quite useful. There's not a huge amount to say really about the Thunderer. Obviously, he doesn't have a drill bill, so I don't think the unit's going to inherit that rule. And he doesn't appear to be a gunnery sergeant either, so because he hasn't got the double barrel gun, so he's only going to have 2 shots with the rifle. He's also obviously not a standard bearer, so that's one ability that isn't going to port over from the Thunderers to the Warband. And it's the abilities of the 3 different units that port over that are really going to sort of make or break this unit for AOS. I think if the Thunderers retreat move in the combat phase gets ported over, that could be quite useful. And it could, if the unit's cheap enough, then I think that could really give this unit a little bit of use. And it's obviously going to affect the points cost as well a little bit. Another thing to note is Sky Wardens have the timed charges ability, which, to be honest, is not hugely powerful, but because it's only on a 6+, but don't know if that ability will port over. But if it does port over and you also get the retreat in the combat phase, that could be quite helpful, just to, the chance to dish out 1 mortal wound when you're retreating as well could be quite handy. And another ability I want to point out that the Arcanauts normally have is obviously Glory Seekers. And so it'd be really interesting to see if this unit gets it, because obviously the whole unit is an Arcanaut. So would you see the Sky Warden getting that, or potentially the the Thunder as well, because if the Thunder did, then he'd be hitting on a 2+, which would be pretty darn good actually. Still wounding on a 4, obviously, but that would be pretty handy. And then the Sky Warden as well with the Sky Pike, which would then hit on a 3, be freeze and freeze, would be fairly tasty. Just throwing that word tasty in there because I know Doom and Darkness hates it. So yeah, don't know really what's happening with the abilities, and that's going to be the most important thing. They're going to be the first things I look at when I look at the War Scroll when we get it tomorrow at some point. The Archanaut with the volley gun. Obviously, he's modelled as he's reloading, so potentially that could become something. Maybe he has some sort of quick reload ability, or so if he, potentially if he on a 6 or something he does something. But I don't really think that anything's going to happen there. I think that's just a cool way of modelling him that they did as an alternate sculpt, really. Obviously, the most important thing with these guys is what happens to the chemist. If he gets his standard abilities, then that will mean this unit is potentially going to be quite good. If he doesn't get his standard abilities, if he gets a modified version, or potentially sort of like a version where he can only affect this unit, then I don't think him or the unit are going to be worthwhile in Age of Sigmar. Also, potentially, we could see a change in his ability that would signal what would happen for the Warband, for the normal chemist if we get a new book. And I would say if we do see a change to his ability that isn't specific to this Warband, then I'd imagine that means we're probably going to be getting a book fairly soon. Soon as in the terms of Warhammer timeline. Doesn't mean it's going to be next week, but if his ability changes, then I'd imagine we'll be getting a book before the end of the year. But of course, that's just my guessing. What else do I want to say about these guys? One other thing I want to bring up about the Sky Warden is potentially he could be the leader of the unit, because the Thunder will, the chemist will be separate, so he'd be the leader within the unit. And I think that will be how they get around the way that he can move, and I think also that means that potentially he'll have the extra attack with the Sky Pike that the normal Sky Warden leader gets, because normally the Custodian makes 3 attacks rather than 2. So I don't think that'd be written as an ability, because obviously he's the only Sky Warden. So that would just be on his stats. So potentially he might have 3 attacks, and that also sort of makes up for the lack of the pistol and things. But I think what we'll see is something along the lines of the leader of this unit is the Sky Warden. This model can move X inches and fly. Maybe he have a change to save or something. Don't know. Because obviously a normal Sky Warden has a 4+ save and 2 wounds, whereas all of the other models in the Warband, chemist aside because he'd be on a separate war scroll, all of the other models have 1 wound and a 5+ save, and I don't think they do sort of 2 lots of stats. The little circle stat thing you get. I don't think we'll get 2 of them. So I think potentially here drop down to a 5+ save. I don't know. I mean, it would be. I don't know. Maybe they will do a whole different stat line. We'll see tomorrow, obviously. But potentially we could see him drop down. It's quite interesting because I don't think we've really seen them do warbands like this, where they've taken models from several different units that normally have different stats. So in terms of points, I think we can safely say that the chemist is either going to be the same or potentially cheaper, because he's going to be a unique character. So he can't take command traits or artifacts. Well, I say that he might not be unique, but a lot of the heroes from warbands are unique characters and can't. There is a couple of exceptions, I think, but most of them are unique. So I think he won't be able to take a command trait or an artifact, which means in theory he should be cheaper. Obviously, his points cost is going to come down mostly to his abilities. So if he has his standard ability, I think he'd be 160 points, maybe 150 or 140. I mean, potentially he could have a stronger ability. There is precedent for that with the other warbands where they have like a slightly stronger version of the standard hero's ability. For instance, there's the Stormcast wizard. What's his name? Something Stormsire, or whether he's basically a knight incanter with a name, and he has a slightly stronger spell. So potentially it would be a stronger chemist, but I don't think they'll go that way because the chemist is already, Brock Grunson aside, he's already our most expensive hero. So I think it's more likely he'd be cheaper or the same. Potentially he could just have, a worse version of the ability where he just buffs this unit only, but he buffs all weapons in the unit. So the chemist, I think I'm going to predict he will just be, I think 140 is going to be my guess if I had to press to it, but that is a guess really, because it could really swing. The Arcanaut at the back of the unit, it's just a standard Arcanaut. So he's about 10 points really. The Arcanauts all sort of, if you divide them evenly, he'd be 12, but the 3 guys with special weapons in the unit should obviously be worth a bit more. And so would the captain and the Glory Seeker's ability, which the unit might not get. So, and in fact, I think actually the unit won't get that ability. So I think you could easily just say he's 10 points, maybe even a little bit less. And of course, then you've also got the Arcanaut with the Volley Cannon. So obviously he's worth a bit more. So he's probably worth about 15 points. So then that's 25 in total. If you obviously he's not going to synergize that well with that chemist, with Thundrik, if it is a +1 to attack. So, and if he doesn't have the Glory Seeker's ability, then he's probably worth less than 15 actually. One thing that's just occurred to me is potentially the chemist ability on this chemist will be +1 to hit for a nearby unit or just for this warband. So that's another option. I think we'll probably average those guys out about 25 points. The Thunderer, again, if you work out a unit like from the normal unit, he'd be worth about 20. You take off a little bit for the retreat charge, which I don't know whether this unit will get the retreating charge. If I was to guess, I'd probably say not. But I really want them to, because that would be great if they did. Yeah, it would be really good if they did. It would actually potentially make this unit quite useful, because you can't increase the size of this unit, and it's going to be stuck to relatively slow movement, and it's going to be a bit of a mixture of shooting and melee. It's not going to be amazing at shooting, and it's not going to be amazing at melee either. So they're really just going to be potentially, like a bit of a cheap screen. So, if they could retreat and move, retreat in the combat phase, it'd it'd actually give them a bit of use on the battlefield. Because then you sort of drop them out of a ship with some other stuff, use them as a cheap screen. And then when the enemy comes in, if they don't attack them first, they retreat off onto an objective or something, a bit like Kron normally does with his Thunders. Another thing I wanted to bring up was I was talking about points, sorry. So, yeah, I think you'd probably actually average him out about 15 points. Which means, if I was saying 20 or 25 for the 2 Arcanauts, then you're looking at 35 or 40 points so far for the unit. And then the Sky Warden. The Sky Warden, yeah, if he's reduced movement, he's lacking his pistol, he's lacking his Sky Mines, and he's probably not going to have his time charges ability. And potentially he's also down to 1 wound and a 5+ save rather than a 4+ save. He's not really, the same stat line anymore as a normal Sky Warden. I mean, that's all, based on my speculation, but he's not going to be the normal Sky Warden cost of 40 points. And let's be honest, it's only, since the last General's Handbook that there were, 120 points for a unit of 3 anyway. There were 100 before. And if you were to ask anyone that plays Kharadron Overlords, they would probably say they don't understand why they're 120. So, or at least the same points as the riggers. So I think you could say he's probably going to be worth about 20 or 25 points. I mean, it depends on what they do with his stat line. So, potentially he is worth up to 35. I mean, he definitely doesn't have the pistol or the Sky Mine, so he's not going to be worth 40, is he? So I think realistically, he could be as low as worth about as low as 20 points. So you could be looking at maybe as low as 60 points for the whole unit. Probably more likely would be 80. But depending what abilities they have, they could be 100. Or if the chemist is a bit cheaper, and it will likely be a situation of if you take the Warband, you have to take the chemist, or if you want to take the chemist, you have to take the Warband. That's generally what they seem to do with these things. So if the chemist is a bit cheaper, then they might sort of inflate the cost of the Warband a bit to compensate for that, or vice versa. So potentially they might even swing up to 120, but I don't see that. I think if I was to make a guess, I'd say we'd be looking at 80 points. So if they're 80 points, and the chemist probably can be 160, then yeah, you're looking at fair few points there, but you're going to be taking a chemist anyway. I mean, I think the crunch point for them is if they're as low as 60, they're going to be useful. I know Gary was doing some speculating himself in the WhatsApp chat the other day, about they're using Clown Car, and there's one ability, Sky Wardens, I haven't mentioned yet, which is the high hitches rule. We don't know if the Sky Warden will actually get that rule. Obviously, they're not going to give that rule to the whole unit, to the whole warband, because there'd be no sort of law for that, really. So there's no law for Thunderers and Arkanauts not taking up space in the ships, and they don't fly. So if that Sky Warden gets the high hitcher rule, then potentially they could be. I think what Gary was thinking was, if you have a sort of standardish Clown Car build where you have 2 chemists, an ironclad, 3 units of 10 Arkanauts, and then a load of riggers, what you have left in your ironclad is you have space for 3 more guys in the ship. There's obviously 4 models in that unit, but if the Sky Warden has the high hitcher rule, then they will fit without you having to take an undersized unit. And obviously you're taking a chemist anyway, so all of a sudden your standard Clown Car build, which if the points are low enough, then and it fits, then you do, without sort of taking anything else out of your list, you just swap the chemist over and you take that. And because the normal Clown Car build will come out at 1,940 points, so with the 60 points you'll be able to squeeze it in, and you've got an extra unit there that you didn't have before, that will shield your Arkanauts or a unit of riggers if you don't send them in first turn. And if they get the retreating charge, that could be fairly useful. But obviously that does depend on the chemist ability again. But I don't know. I don't know if I even get the high hitches rule. Again, that is that's something that could sort of signify what could happen in later books, because Games Workshop might not actually view it as a problem, but I think the Sky Warden and Endrin Riggers high hitcher rule is one of probably the biggest problems with Kharadron Overlords at the moment. Obviously, it's a great rule from a power perspective for someone that plays the army, but it's not thematic with the lore, and it does sort of push most army lists down to a particular build, where if you're choosing between what extra units to take in a list, you're like, well, they don't take up space in the ship, so I'll take them. It does make a lot of lists look very similar. So say if he does get a rule of some sort that interacts with the ships, where we could see that it is potentially slightly different. Who knows? Be interesting. Or I wouldn't say that if this Sky Warden doesn't get the high hitcher rule, then that means that Endrin Riggers and Sky Wardens are going to lose that rule in the future by any means. But if he gets a rule called high hitcher and it has different wording, or if it has a completely different effect, then that could potentially signify something that could happen in a future book. But yeah, whether or not he gets that rule will be quite important, I think, because there's a lot of lists that people take where they have a ship and 2 heroes, and then the rest of the ship space is taken up by 10 Arkanauts, or 10 Thunderers potentially. So a unit that takes up that other three slots could be quite useful. But yeah, we'll have to see. So yeah, I think we're going to be looking. I reckon we'll be looking at 80 points anyway. Yeah, 80 points. I reckon 160 for the chemist. I'm going to guess at. the other thing that potentially we could see happen is what they do with a lot of war bands is they do some sort of extra ability that ties the hero and the warband together. For instance, something like the they get an extra 5+ save on anything, or on any wounds or mortal wounds if they're within so many inches of the hero, or the hero can pass wounds onto the unit, or something like that. So it might not be on the chemist war scroll. There could be some sort of ability on the unit's war scroll where they get a boost just for being near that chemist, near Thundrik. Something else, one other option that has just occurred to me, which quite interesting. I'd be surprised to it, is they could just have a completely separate war scroll for the Sky Warden and for the rest of the warband, rather than a different stat line. They could do that. They could do it along the lines of the way they do with our artillery or something like that. So it's still one unit but with 2 war scrolls. Or what they could do is actually have 2 separate units there. So the warband actually becomes 2 units in AOS, and the Sky Warden would have to be ridiculously cheap. I don't think they'd do that, but it's a possibility. I think more likely they'd just be all on 1 war scroll, potentially 2 war scrolls as still 1 unit. But we'll see. We will. I mean, other than that, it's hard to really sort of speculate on where or how good this unit's going to be in an army, because without knowing points, you don't. Yeah, I mean, they're going to live and die by their points. I think the safest thing to assume is that they're not going to be strong from a damage dealing point of view, but if they're cheap enough, then they could fill a little hole somewhere as a screening unit, or if they get some sort of interesting ability. Just even if they have an ability where, or the Thundrik has an ability where he can pass wounds on to this unit, say if it's on a 6 or 5, similar to sort of like how a necromancer can, or how a gun hauler can take wounds from a ironclad. Then if that chemist has all his normal abilities, just the fact that he's a bit tougher and stronger, if you've got the points in your list to include him rather than a normal chemist, that could be quite handy. If you're playing something like Duality of Death or one of the hero scoring missions, then just having a chemist that's a bit more survivable could be quite handy. Although, obviously, if you can't take an artifact, that's not going to be great on some of the newer missions, where it does require either a wizard or a hero with an artifact. Yeah, so I think that's where they're going to place, really, is as a screening unit, cheap chaff, which we need in an army in Kharadron Overlords, really, because the cheapest unit we have available to us is 100 points. If you compare that to say Seraphon or something that have got 60-point units, and they can just push something forward that's really cheap and don't care if it dies, it's hard for us to do that. I mean, especially if you're chasing low drops, because you can add in a Thundrik unit or something, and they at 100 points, they're not expensive, but you kind of tend to want to push towards having the larger units for your chemist buffs anyway. I mean, and then with Arcanauts, I use Arcanauts at screens all the time, unfortunately, but they're 120 points. So you don't really want to be throwing them away. You know, if you could throw away a unit that costs half as much as that, or only 80 points, that could make all the difference. We've got, and that keeps an engine rigger unit alive for a turn, or you know, say if you've got 30 Arcanauts sitting behind, you probably wouldn't fit them behind a unit this size, but you know, having a cheaper screening unit will be quite handy potentially, especially with stuff like Crystal Gore going around, that they can you know, attack you multiple times in the combat phase, keep piling in over and over. You know, often one screen isn't going to be enough anymore. You know, you need layers. So, you know, if they are cheap enough, I think they're going to be good. If the chemist has his normal ability, I think it'll be good. If either of those two things don't happen, then at least there'll be nice alternate sculpts. Quite happy just to, you know, if I've got a unit of 10 Arcanauts with 3 volley guns, put that guy in instead of one of the normal ones, just so the unit looks a bit different. Or if I'm running a unit of Sky Wardens, then put him in as a leader of the unit. Okay, and I've just found out that we can actually see the war scrolls now. So I'm going to actually talk about the real war scrolls. I've just been literally wasting my time for 40 minutes because I now have the real war scrolls. Right, so where did they come from? Someone has just sent me the pictures and I don't know where they got them from. Oh, they're just on the website. Sorry about this. If there is anyone watching live or listening to this later, where are they? Where has he got that from? Well, I can't share on screen because I've got my phone, so I'm just going to talk for them because I don't know where these war scrolls come from. So, Thundrik, he's got 4+ save, 4-inch move, 7 bravery, 5 wounds. That's all standard. Extra augmentation, this is the most important bit. In your hero phase, you can pick one friendly Skyfarer's unit within 10 inches of this model, and then pick one type of weapon that the unit is armed with, add one to the attacks characteristic of that weapon type for that unit until the next hero phase. A weapon cannot benefit from this ability more than once at the same time. So, other than at the same time, at the end of that, I think that is worded word for word. And the bit where it says at the same time doesn't have any bearing on what the ability does. So that's standard. Atmospheric isolation. Subtract 1 from the attacks characteristic of melee weapons used by any melee rules with blah 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 blah. That's the same. And his gun is 10 inches, 3d6, falls and falls -2, 1 damage. That's the same. His heavy instruments, I believe that looks the same as well. Oh, and I have points. They don't have individual points, actually. It's just 260 for the whole unit. So they were 100 points, the Warband, if you were to split it out roughly. So I don't think that's going to... Potentially, that could be quite useful. Let's read. I have to have a think. It's not as obviously good as if it was... So if that was 240, I'd be like, oh, that's quite handy. But I know a lot of my lists come out at, say, 1940. So if you took a chemist out and added these guys in instead of something else, it wouldn't be a problem. Like, well, actually, no, it would be. Yeah, it would be 1960. You'd lose a command point. No, let's just quickly look, see what they've done here with this guy one. Because the Profiteers are all on a 4+ save, which is interesting. 7 bravery as well. I didn't actually talk about the bravery stats because, to be honest, they don't normally. Well, obviously they do make a difference, but you know, it's not you go to. It's not massive compared to movement or a save or number of wounds. 4+ save. Having a 4+ save it's better than I was expecting. Well, I think the first thing to say is there's no high hitches ability, so yeah, no high. That means that the unit's going to take up 4 spaces in its ship. Well, since it's since they're all the points are combined to 260, then 5 spaces because you've got the Thunder space, but you'd have not the Thunder, it's a chemist space, but you'd have a chemist anyway. Glory Seekers, they have that. Okay, so the Sky Warden is similar to what I was suspecting. He basically has some variations to the stats. So he has +1 to his wound characteristic. And when you move with him, you can treat him as if he can fly, but he doesn't have any boost to the movement, so he's still 4 inches move. So yeah, treating him, I mean, the extra wound is kind of helpful. The treating him as if he can fly, when he's only on a movement 4, it's not gonna make a big difference really. It might help when you're piling in, because he might be able to sort of pile in over the top of a, if he's already close to if he ends the charge close to sort of a model on a 25mm base, he can then literally just pile in straight over the top, and then with his 2-inch range, he will he can then potentially attack something else. But it's only one model, so that's not going to make a huge amount of difference. And then 3 attacks, 4s and 4s. So the Skypike is not actually as strong, but he does have 3 attacks rather than the 2, like I was guessing at. So yeah, the Skypike is more attacks than a normal Skywarden Skypike. With 3, it's basically the same as the Custodians. But it's on 4s and 4s. Normally have -2 rent. No, normally have -1. Oh, he has got a pistol as well. Must be tapped around the back or something. And And that's the same. That's still only got its little 9-inch range, which is disappointing. But and then the volley gun is unchanged, completely the same as normal. The rifle is 4 attacks, which I wouldn't have guessed. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that the rifle would get 4 attacks. So that's quite good, actually. 4 attacks from that one little guy on 3s and 4s, -1 round, 18 rage. Then the other Archanaut with his pistol is standard. The Archanaut cutter is standard. The gun butter's got a boost, I think. Don't they normally only have 1 attack? I mean, it's not going to make a huge amount of difference, but yeah, the gun butt has gained an extra attack. So I guess rather than do things, sort of get overcomplicated with giving the chemist this weird ability that has lots of weird wording, they've just augmented the stats a bit. And so there's, the airshot rifle's got extra attacks, the Skypike's got an extra attack, the gunbutt's got an extra attack, and it's kind of interesting. Either that or it's just to, bump them up a bit for other reasons. The Sky Warden having 3 attacks kind of makes sense anyway, because he's the leader of the unit, and a Custodian would normally have 3 attacks anyway. 260 points. Yeah, I mean, it was slightly more than I was hoping for, but it's not bad. It's okay. It's not, it's not good. It's not something I'll go, right, I need to squeeze that into a list. And it's not, not bad either. It's not like, oh, well, I'm just going to write that off as being terrible. Yeah, it's not something I'm going, well, it's not gun hauler bad. I think that's the way to describe it. Yeah. So actually, looking at the extra attacks, the Thunder is basically almost treated as if he's the gunnery sergeant with his 4 attacks. Yeah, it's a shame that the Archanaut didn't get an extra attack or get the pistol version where it's 4+3+. Like a captain would, because it looked like they're basically given like each individual model almost like the leader stats from their units. But well, I mean, I wouldn't have expected that because he's not modelled as a company captain. So, what do I think of these guys now? I've seen all one. No. Yeah, I think really, it comes down to what points you have down left in your list, and if you want a cheap unit, it's interesting as well because the combined points on here, but 2 war scrolls rather than how they normally do it, where they give different points and then say, oh, if you take one, you have to take the other. So I wonder if that means, I mean, well, they're separate war scrolls, so it's the same as like crew and artillery. I was wondering if you could someone tries to shoot the chemist, you can then just put the wounds on the Archonauts and stuff, but they're separate war scrolls, so yeah, you're not going to get away with that. Oh no, wait. These units must be taken as a set for a total of 200 points. Although taken as a set, each is a separate unit. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so they are separate units. Must be taken together. Yeah, really, it's gonna. So just gonna come down to whether you want a 100-point screening unit that isn't Thunderers. 4%. You're gonna have less wounds. Oh no, you have the same amount of wounds because you get +1 to the Sky Warden's wounds. So, I mean, if you play a clown car, because the Sky Warden doesn't have the high hit rule, if you've got Thundrik and then another hero, you probably won't be able to fit them in your ship anyway. It's the same problem as if you wanted to take Thunderers. I don't know. Don't know if I would squeeze them into my current list. I mean, I'm not playing clown car, but because they're obviously not going to be battle line either. So, if I just wanted a 100-point unit, maybe I would just take normal Thunderers. Can't see much reason to take these guys instead. Hit ones with attacks made by this unit. The +1 to hit though. I mean, so that Aethercast rifle is hitting on 2s effectively against heroes and monsters. So compared to normal Thunderers, that's quite good. It's a wound on a 4. Yeah, the volley gun would be useless without Glory Seekers, to be honest. So, and then yeah, that's why the Skypark's not freeze to wound, isn't it? Because the Skypark was the normal free to wound that it is for Sky Wardens. And I don't know, it doesn't. I mean, I never use the Skypark, but it kind of balance it out a bit, especially with it having 3 attacks. I mean, basically turns it into an Archanaut Skypike. Because a normal Archanaut Skypike is 4s and 4s. Skywarden is 4s and 3s, but with +1 to hit, 3s and 4s compared to 4s and 3s is basically the same. Although obviously it's only against heroes and monsters. Isn't gun put the other way around as well? No, it's the same way around 4s and 5s. Not 4. I never remember if they're 4s and 5s or 5s and 4s. That's the same. I mean, obviously, you're never going to buff this unit with Thundrik. is the funny thing about it, because it's So yeah, maybe if I wanted a cheap 100-point unit, I would take them for Rule of Cool. But I think I'd rather have the Thunderers, just because the retreat and charge. But then, if I had all rifles, then yeah, at least I got a unit there. I can buff the chemist if I lose my other units. Or I just realised I said retreat and charge. I meant retreat in the combat phase. So yeah, Sky Warden. It's a bit disappointing. I thought it'd at least have a bit more of a extra movement characteristic. I mean, the 4+ save for everyone is quite good. but and he's keeping his 2 wounds, but it would have been really nice to see him have at least a 6-inch move, or I mean even a. I mean, I understand why they've done it. It just makes things so much simpler when you're playing the unit if everything moves 4. But there could have been some nice shenanigans you could have done there, where he just swaps from one end of the unit to the other as you move them, and where people sort of measured distance to one side of the unit, and you effectively end up moving them further. So I think that's that. Obviously, everyone's going to be discussing these guys at length in the future, because it's the first new unit we've had in a long time. So I'm sure people will think of something I've missed. But I think the answer is there's nothing to write home about. There's nothing inherently interesting or amazing in the unit, and there's also nothing terrible, which is good. That's always, like, if you're going to look on the positive side of things, there's nothing really bad there. There's no change to the chemist ability, which if there's a book like a month down the line or 2 months down the line, I would have maybe they would have put it on this warband straight away. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they would just, maybe even if there is a book a couple of weeks away, that they would I don't know, would they put the new ability on, or would they not? They want to, because I think if they did, they would know that people are going to guess, oh, that ability is changing. Don't know. I mean, I guess if I lean towards it being more 60% to 40%, rather than 50-50 being a good thing, that it means that we likely won't see a change to the chemist if we get a new book. If we get a new book, everyone thinks we're going to get one, but it's still an if. No one knows for certain. But I don't think I can say a huge amount else about these guys. I mean, I think the takeaway is there isn't a massive amount of difference. There's no huge change to the chemist. You know what? In fact, I'm going to change my opinion. I was saying, I might take them for rule or call or something if I wanted a. But I think actually just that chemist being unique and therefore not being able to take an artifact or be a general could be a bit of a deal breaker. I mean, it depends whether you're playing a battalion, obviously, or Urbaz. Like, if you're playing Urbaz and you've got 2 chemists, you wouldn't want him to be one of your chemists because, you can't take an artifact. If you're not playing a battalion, it's not going to make any difference to you because you just make your other chemists your general. I don't know. I mean, I'm still going to get them because they're cool. Extra models. Third Thunderer. Everyone, not third Thunderer, third chemist. Everyone needs a third chemist, don't they? And at least they look different to the other ones. And they've all got cool bases as well. It's fun. Got Skull and they're about flight stands, so I think Dan, when I was chatting to him yesterday, basically hit the nail on the head when he said, really, they're cool alternate sculpts and they're not going to be any more influential in the game than that. I think that's the takeaway. So yeah, if you've just been listening to me for an hour, the answer to everything I've just been speaking about is that someone else was right. I'm going to call it a day now, I think, because I've talked about pretty much everything I can do about these guys. Don't know when the next episode of Aethercast is going to be. We had planned to do one either tomorrow or later this weekend once we saw the warscroll, but we've seen that now. So I don't know. Maybe that means we can actually finish talking about competitive list building, or maybe it means we can do it a bit later once we've had more time to think about the impact of these guys. So yeah, I'm going to sign off now. Just remember, everyone, that everything I said is just guidelines. These are just guidelines. Okay, bye everyone.